Okay, welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday. I'm going to go with the flavour of leadership again. I get a lot of feedback when I meet people and they like to talk about what their learnings are from the Whiteboard Wednesday and their application to their own role. And so the focus of today, and it's from an article that I read, which is a Harvard Business Review article, which was called "What Only the CEO Can Do," and it's one of those articles which again had a pretty strong impact, because even as a CEO, often you struggle to define exactly what it is you do versus what other people do. That balance between being into the strategic, creative, and obviously the need to have very strong operational focus to manage the business on a day-to-day basis. But what is it that only the CEO of a business can do? And this talk will probably apply to people who are either in the position of senior management or CEOs of businesses, people who perhaps run their own business, or people who find by what they do they have such independence in their particular job that they need to really, from time to time, really drill down as to what is it that is expected of them as against everyone else they work as a leader and someone who is required to define the careers of other people as well. And it's interesting because when I have conversations with Dean Bailey, I think it also applies to what only a coach can do. There is something special about their role which goes way beyond their acumen as a football person. What is the expectation of them as a senior coach, quite apart from their job description? The thing that the organisation is reliant on them to be, and if they're not those things, well then the organisation has some gaps which are very, very difficult to fill. And I'd say the same applies with the role of a CEO. The interesting thing is when we all get together, the 16 CEOs, or recently the 17th CEO or now sorry, we've got 18 CEOs actually of AFL clubs. One of the interesting things is that we physically and metaphorically come from in all shapes and sizes. We've got very different backgrounds. Some have quite a traditional football background, as in they've grown up in the game. Others have come in from the outside and applying their skills and their acumen to a football club. Often, early days. And that can be a pretty significant transition as you get to understand the idiosyncrasies of this business. But they come from very different views, and what that also shows is there's no absolute in any of these areas. There's different approaches that people can actually take. There are different things that they bring to it. I think the most important thing, as I've talked about a lot with leadership, is that the leadership that they provide must be consistent with their personality and what they actually bring, both in terms of their values, but also in where their strong interests actually are. There's four elements to this notion of what only the CEO can do, and I'll explain them as we go along. I think the first one is probably the most the difficult to explain, and in this article they call it, they simply say this: it's defining the meaningful outside. And the word, they're three very important words: define, meaningful, and clearly outside. What we're basically saying there is that there's an enormous amount of stakeholders who have an interest in the role of any business, whether it's the customers you're dealing with, whether it's government agencies. In our case, we've got the AFL, the MCC. We have an enormously broad customer base, all of whom make great demands of our business. And if you're not careful, you can actually have an organisation which just simply waxes and wanes based on those who have the loudest voices in and around whether it's your customer base or whether it is other key stakeholders within it. So defining within your club what is actually meaningful about all the noise and the information and all those sorts of things around your club is really fundamental. And that gives you a capacity to walk a straight line when it comes to strategy, or walk a straight line even when it comes to the response of the demands that people make. The fact is you can't be all things to all people. And because you have, as a CEO, you have different areas of your organisation who are all subject to the demands of whatever their respective stakeholder group is, you can find those things come into conflict at different times. So by definition, it points to the CEO to be the person who actually defines, in fact, what is meaningful about all the outside all the outside pressures and the capacity, if you like, to make sure you stay a little bit internal in regard to what's important, rather than externalising all of your frustrations and difficulties and challenges. And football, this is really important because you can quite quickly, whether it be the media, whether it be critical stakeholder groups, whether it be, even your supporters who may get frustrated with performances from time to time, want it to happen quicker than what you've got the capacity to do it, whether it's, other groups in and around the football club, they can really start, pushing you around if you're not careful. So if you've got a straight line that you're actually walking, understanding that you're always going to be evolving and developing and taking in new information, and you've got to listen and all those types of things, but you have to be able to define what is meaningful about all the outside influences in regard to it all. That's quite difficult to explain, but I think if I was going to say what is the difference between successfully CEOing and non-successful, I think it's that. And perhaps my greatest learning, even as a young person coming in, was that I was way too influenced by people who didn't know nearly as much about the business as we did internally, and you found yourself just getting pushed around a little bit too much. So we walk a straight line. We don't do it in a way which is obnoxious or arrogant or indulgent, but we understand where we're actually taking, and from time to time that means saying no to people who it's hard to say no to.